We are rolling out the welcome mat today, everyone. We all love mashups, right? So we brought in the boys from the Saddle Up podcast to talk Colts with us on today's episode. Let's get to it.
You are Locked On Colts, your daily Indianapolis Colts podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right. Thank you all for tuning in and making us your number one listen of the day. This is your daily podcast covering your Indianapolis Colts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's show is presented by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates that you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. This is Jake Arthur, and I am sans my PIC Zach Hicks today. But I've got these two stallions with me. It's none other than Rashaad McGinnis and Destin Adams. The pair of them write and host the Saddle Up podcast for Stampede Blue. Welcome in, guys. Thanks for being with us.
Hey, it's good to be here, man. I mean, we decided to let the guns out in honor of Zach. Yeah. We didn't want that aura, that energy not to be here just because he's not here. So we had to let him out.
I wish we could be here under better circumstances, but we're going to have some fun today and make the best out of the opportunity that we're presented with.
Absolutely. Yeah, you guys being without the sleeves, that is very on brand. See, now I feel balanced because I'm not used to there being sleeves on the other screen. So this is going to be good for me. I'm glad you guys came prepared.
Hey, Jake, these things are illegal in about 46 states, man. These guns?
I believe it. Deadly weapons. Oh man. So besides tank tops, today we're going to chat about these guys get their thoughts on the Colts, how things currently stand and why, as well as look forward to this Thursday night football game with the Broncos. I mean, not a great time for the Colts to be on prime time, but it is what it is, you know. So fellas, we're at 1-2-1 right now. The Colts are, including 0-2-1 in the division. They had this magical win against the Kansas City Chiefs, but their other three games have all been dropped games to division rivals. Tennessee, Jacksonville, and Houston was the tie. Not a great way to start the season. Perhaps most confusing and infuriating, really, is that they've had 7 deficits of at least 17 points in all three of those games, leading you to think, hey, they're freaking dead, like at any point in all of those games. How do we get here, man? Destin, we'll go ahead and start with you.
I mean, how do we get here? I mean, I think this Colts team going into the season, they were saying all the right things. I've said it multiple times. I mean, I drank the Kool-Aid. Being out there at Grand Park, I saw it in person. It just seemed like there was just this different energy going into week one than what we've seen in these past few years. And then we get into the year and we start out as flat as ever. And this is probably, because of the hype, especially going into it, this is probably the most shocking and why it's such big news around the league right now. Because usually a team that starts out slow, starts out poorly, you wouldn't think that it would be everywhere like this. But the national media was kind of jumping in on it. Matt Ryan, Yannick, Stephon Gilmore, just multiple guys coming into Indy thinking that this team is going to be different than years past. And to me, it's been a lot of reasons. I think the front office has a lot of things that they can wear in the blame department and just decisions they made. Rolling out Matt Pryor at left tackle, rolling out Danny Pinter at right guard, knowing those guys aren't naturally at those positions. The coaches deserve a lot of blame with just how flat and unprepared this team looks, from the head coach to positional coaches. And then I don't ever want to take blame away from players, because when your best players are playing at this low a level right now, like, they deserve to be called out. I mean, the highest making guys on this roster are not showing out. When the middle tier guys are who you want to make your player of the game every single time, that's a cool story. And I love to be able to like hype up those guys like Mo Alley Cox and Zaire Franklin and all these guys who are playing well. But for those guys to be your best performers week in, week out, this is going to keep being the outcome.
Yeah, no doubt. That's kind of what happens when you allocate so much money into certain guys at non-premium positions. Like when their performance waxes and wanes, you're gonna have to rely on these role players a little too much. Rashaad, man, what do you think? Where do they stand right now? What can they even do?
Right now, in my opinion, everything starts and I don't want to say ends with the offensive line, but that's my main concern at this point in the season. You know, the defense I think has been pretty standard. Me and Destin talked about yesterday. You know, the offense is putting the defense in such a compromising position. You know, with all of these turnovers and just these self-inflicting penalties, it's really it sucks because the defense, you know, they take a lot of criticism for Gus Bradley, saying Gus Bradley doesn't switch up his scheme enough. He doesn't change up his looks, his variations. He doesn't blitz and different things like that. The defense played outstanding in the second half of the Houston game, the second half of the Jacksonville game, really, the entire Kansas City game, and the second half of the Tennessee game. So they have flashed. You know, they've shown the ability to get it done. But as long as this offensive line is not protected for Matt Ryan or opening holes for Jonathan Taylor, which to Jonathan Taylor's credit, he brings some of this on himself because there was a couple of opportunities he missed to hit big plays. But I think for the most part, you can't get anything going with this offense that has shown the young guys are playing really well in this offense, but they're just not given enough opportunities because of the offensive line that's currently failing them.
I'm glad you brought that up. That's actually something we've talked about a lot too recently, especially these last 2 weeks. Is, you know, initially it seemed like Gus Bradley was maybe being a little stubborn in his coverages. People nationally were pointing it out. You know, he runs more single high than everyone else. Going into the KC game, you know, Patrick Mahomes feasted against that, and then here they come, you know, running more cover two and showing they could be more multiple. So that was really good. And like you said, aside from the first half of Tennessee, they really shut them down. If the offense would have been up to snuff at all, I think the Colts win that game. But the defense doesn't get a whole lot of the blame for me, or at least I don't think they should, because that offense constantly turning the ball over. You know, Matt Ryan fumbling at a record rate. There's interceptions. Jonathan Taylor in the run game not being able to go is obviously setting things back because you can't maintain drives and things like that. It's, you know, the defense barely has any time to rest, it seems like. You know, considering some of the mistakes they made in the offseason, or at least in hindsight, what looks like mistakes, whether it's, you know, not enough competition on the offensive line or not a dynamic enough pass catching group, whatever, what changes do you think they can actually make now to kind of save some face and salvage a little bit of things moving forward, make things a little better? Go ahead, Destin.
Okay, sorry, I wasn't sure who was supposed to go.
We'll take turns.
Yeah, I like it. I mean, I think changes that need to happen are they just have to be able to trust, especially on the offensive line. I mean, to me, a lot of issues are solved if you solve that. I thought the willingness of the coaching staff to make a change in this past game, whether it was during practice or not, it was made aware on game day basically that Will Fries was going to start at right guard, and I thought he held his own. I thought he played well in his first NFL start, in my opinion. So that was a good sign. Now, did my heart drop and did I die a little bit when the next depth chart came out and Danny Pinter was still the right guard? Maybe a little bit, but let's hope that was just like an error on their part. But yeah. I think those kind of decisions are what needs to happen. You have to have willingness to make changes. You have to be willing to adjust mid-game and during practice. You have to be able to make those changes. I think another change that we should see once healthy is a guy like Bernhard Raimann, who fits better in the left tackle position, takes over that for Matt Pryor, and then just getting that five on the same page. I mean, Ryan Kelly said it multiple times. They're not playing as one. They're not playing as one offensive line. They are five individual linemen playing right now, and I think a lot of that has to do with the trust issues. So I think if you can fix that up front, make those changes, I think there are good things that we've seen in this offense. And I know that's hard to say for people listening right now, because a lot of the times when you just see the whole picture together, it's ugly. But there have been parts that are nice. I mean, we've seen bigger deep balls being thrown. We've seen those big explosive plays. Like, we've had flashes of what we missed during the Phillip Rivers years, but also having those little short underneath things that we didn't see during the Carson Wentz years. Like, if everything goes well in this offense, we can combine what we saw with Carson, combine what we saw with Rivers that worked well, and this offense can be successful, but not while we're doing these kindergarten mistakes where these guys just do not look like they have any push off the line. And if we can't get any push, it's going to be a long season.
Yep, I totally agree. That's been their bread and butter. So they still have it in them, but it's like, why isn't it happening? What about you, Shaad? What do you think?
You don't even need these guys to be, special. Just the guys that you're paying, you need them to be average versions of themselves. They're not even doing that. They're looking like shells of themselves, and it's really unexplainable in some situations. The blitz thing, the pressure situations where it was communication, you can obviously see it's communication. Okay, that's something that can be cleaned up in practice through talking it through. But when you see those guys just get beat, guys like Quinn Nelson, who was getting beat by Danico Autry, and just Danny Pinter, who got physically abused in the Kansas City game by Chris Jones. The guys that you pay, you need those guys to play up to the stature that you're paying them, because without them, you have to kind of skim on the other parts. You skimmed out on right guard and you skimmed on left tackle, because you're paying your right tackle, you're paying your center, you're paying your left guard, you're paying those guys top 5 money at their position. So you need them to be exceptional or at least average in order to balance out the rest of the O-line. I can take some of the lesser guys, the right guard and the left tackle, getting beat. If my other guys are performing at the level they're supposed to be performing at, then, it's a little more acceptable and a little more correctable. But when your superstars and the guys you're paying are playing this way, then it's kind of hard, to say that a tweak here or a tweak there is going to fix this. These guys got to take a look in the mirror, man, and take some accountability for each of their individual actions, and hopefully start to hold each other accountable, and maybe that'll bring forth a change. But I don't really think schematically there's anything different they can do besides talk through some of these communication issues. And I like the right guard switch to Will Fries. I think he looked like a competent starter. He didn't look special or anything. He lost a couple reps, but that's, it's expected, especially when you're playing against Jeffrey Simmons, Danico Autry, Bud Dupree for a quarter. But, you're playing against a talented defensive line like that. That's understandable. I just need the guys that are getting paid premium money to play like premium players. That's it.
Yeah, exactly. And they don't even need to make the Pro Bowl. But when you have that much money tied up in certain spots and those guys aren't living up to it, it screws everything up, because it's like, yeah, we skimped on this money because we know this guy's supposed to play like this, but he's not, and now everything sucks.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's how things just kind of run out of amok. But there's been lots of talk about job security or a lack thereof, especially these last few weeks with this rough start. But for those of us in the real world, we can always rely on LinkedIn, whether we're an employer or a job seeker, either side of the coin. As you gear up for fall, you need the right people on your team to help your small business fire on all cylinders. LinkedIn Jobs is here to make it easier to find people that you want to talk to faster and for free. Create a free job post in minutes on LinkedIn Jobs to reach your network and beyond to the world's largest professional network of over 810 million people. Then add your job in the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring so that your network can help you find the right people to hire. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates you want to talk to faster. Did you know every week nearly 40 million job seekers visit LinkedIn? That's a lot. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Thanks again for making Locked On Colts your first listen every day. Make sure you check out NFL key predictions every Friday on Locked On NFL. Locked On's local experts give you the inside scoop on the 5 biggest games of the NFL weekend, including Sunday and Monday Night Football. Plus betting advice from the field's leading experts at BetOnline. Follow NFL key predictions every Friday on Locked On NFL, available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. All right, fellas. So all that crap is behind us. We're looking forward to Thursday. That's right. Thursday Night Football, the Colts' first primetime game of the year. Jim Irsay has been screaming for these primetime games for a few years now. finally got him, but it's not a great time for it to happen. So the Colts, it looks like they're going to be pretty short-handed going into this one. Shaquille Leonard and Tyquan Lewis, concussions out. The Colts probably in light of recent events around the NFL are just being really cautious, but it's a short week and it would be hard to clear the protocol regardless. Julian Blackmon, another starter. He still hasn't practiced in about a week and a half. I can't imagine he's going to be out there. Jonathan Taylor has the ankle, and it was reported a little bit of turf toe as well. He sounds optimistic, and from what I know about him, I talked to him the day he was drafted. No one takes better care of their body than that guy. So, like, if someone was going to be able to do it, I think he could, but I don't know why you would. Like, I don't. Both sides are kind of evenly matched in this one. I don't think you really need to rush him out there. As for the Broncos side with injuries, they had the unfortunate injury to Javonte Williams, tore his ACL. He's out for the year. Randy Gregory, one of their top pass rushers, landed on IR as well. So I'm sure that makes everyone feel a little bit better. But again, the Broncos are 2-2. They've had some really ugly, low-scoring games, even in their wins. Honestly, I think they're kind of similar to the Colts. A struggling offense, lacking an identity, but they've got a pretty good defense. So, Rashaad, we'll start with you. You've been doing this behind enemy lines series throughout the season, and you've been able to identify some opponents that have been able to do damage against the Colts, just like you predicted. What's it telling you this week, man? What we got to look forward to in the Broncos?
Yeah, man. Unfortunately, I've been able to predict a touchdown for every guy I've wrote about so far. So
there you go.
This week is going to be I'm focusing on Jerry Jeudy. I was going to go with Courtland Sutton because I think he's the better player overall. But Jerry Jeudy, as far as what he does specifically and his specific skill set, it's been giving the Colts trouble this season. The Colts have struggled with guarding the middle of the field, whether it's a tight end or whether it's a slot receiver. The boundary corners have been great, in the times you needed them to play. But the slot receivers and the tight ends have been attacking the seams, attacking shallow, deep middle of the field. We saw Christian Kirk do it with a couple of touchdowns a couple of weeks ago. We saw what O.J. Howard did after being on the Texans for literally a week. And now Jerry Jeudy, a guy, a guy with exceptional short area quickness. He already has couple of touchdowns this season. He's going to be matched up for the most part with Kenny Moore. He's taken 75 snaps from the slot, 50% of his snaps total. So I'm assuming they're going to line him up pretty much all game in the slot and attack what's been the Colts' weakness. And if Kenny Moore doesn't play any better than he's played since about the last 5 games dating back, well, if you add the last 2 from last season, it's about 6 games now. He definitely has to turn the corner. They don't use him the same way that Eberflus used him last year, doing pretty much a Swiss Army knife where he's doing a bunch of different things, rushing the quarterback, setting the edge in the run game, playing zone coverage predominantly. He's getting matched up with some of these guys, man. In a zone match scheme, he's going to have to turn and run with some of these guys, and he's having problems doing it. I don't know if Jerry Jeudy is going to be a guy that Kenny Moore is going to have success with. I don't know if this is the week he turns around his good play. Jerry Jeudy has been attacking, and it's not like Russ, because Russ traditionally is a deep ball thrower. That's why I was expecting big numbers from Courtland Sutton, but it looked like him and Jeudy has established a good rapport between the both of them, and that's something the Colts have to look out for.
Yeah, I think that's a good one, absolutely. And your comparison to Christian Kirk is honestly kind of scary to think about. And I was kind of thinking this might be a good one for Isaiah Rodgers to get involved with, because I think he'd be able to hang with Jeudy a little better than Brandon Faison. But you make a good point with the slot coverage that it's probably going to be a lot of Kenny Moore. What about you, Destin? What's kind of one of the big things you're looking for in this one?
Yeah, I'm interested to see just kind of what both teams do when it goes to the running game, just because they're going to be a lot of adjustments on both sides. I'm interested to see if the Colts are going to call up Phillip Lindsay, which they kind of suggested already that that's the route that they would go. So seeing Phillip Lindsay, who if he's activated, I could see him getting more rushing snaps than Nyheim Hines. I mean, it seems like Hines is missing. I don't know if anybody's been able to find him. If anyone's been putting up those signs anywhere in downtown Indy that he's missing. But
I'd love for them to find him.
I would. I mean, I really would like for them to find him. We miss you, Naeem. We miss
8
you.
carries for 11 yards this season.
I think Zach and I mentioned this. I'd give him 10 catches on Thursday at least.
And
like
I would like it
in a variety of ways.
Yeah.
But see, the last time I said this was when Pittman and Pierce weren't playing. And in my head, I was like, it's going to be a big game for Nyheim Hines. It only makes sense. We don't trust these receivers. These tight ends are still really raw. Hines, let's do it. And then we still only saw him in minimal snaps in that game.
Yeah.
So I just don't understand it. But so I'm really interested if Jonathan Taylor can't go in a game for a team that's already struggling to get push in the run game. I'm really curious of what that identity of the offense is going to look like. I would expect a lot of Matt Ryan. And then moving over to the other side for Denver, Javonte Williams is out for the year. They've been kind of doing a 65-35 type split anyway with Javonte and Melvin Gordon. So I almost give them the edge in the sense where I feel like they'll be more prepared for something like this to happen because for whatever reason, the Colts have not been willing to make that adjustment to have multiple guys featured. So I'm really interested to see who's able to win that because both offenses have struggled this year at times of moving the ball consistently. So in a game like this where both defenses are playing well, I'm really curious of which team that's going to be because in my head right now, I give it to Denver and that makes me nervous. But every time I've picked against the Colts this year, we've won. So let's see what happens.
I know, right? Isn't that just so frustrating? It's the team you know the most and that you can trust the least.
Hey, I'm willing to sacrifice my weekly pick 'em one game a week. If this is what it is, this is the magical way. I'll pick the Colts to lose every single week. I'm willing. I'm able.
Well, that brings us to a very interesting point, Destin, because we get to now talk about our next sponsor, BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for football betting info this season. Find all of your latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, in-depth articles, analysis on every game you can find. And as always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all your sports wagering information with live betting and up-to-the-minute scores for every sport out there. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite games and events, including the MLB, MMA, boxing, and golf. The Colts are actually 3-point road dogs in this one, according to BetOnline, which is probably generous, honestly, considering what could happen. But I love the 43.5-point over-under in this matchup because it just has the makings of being one of those gross games like that. Like, that's one I kind of want to just really embrace the under. But before game time, head to betonline.net or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, fellas, before I flip it over to you, I'll let you know what I'm thinking in this one. My heart says the Colts win. I think we all know there's a recipe for them to do it, and this is the kind of game they win. The Broncos are a similarly struggling group, and again, the Colts just win these games where they're the underdog, and I feel like they've had some good performances on primetime matchups. No one expects them to win. They really only thrive when they're not expected to do well. But my head and my heart are different. My eyes tell me that the Colts haven't earned our trust yet. So I say it's 20-16 Broncos. It feels more likely for the Broncos to have a get-right game at home rather than the Colts, who are going to be down a few guys probably. So I don't know. What do you guys think?
So I promise I am going to pick the Broncos in my weekly pick 'em to keep the magic going.
Mm-hmm.
But I just have this belief that the Broncos who have been struggling, and this just seems like the kind of game where the Colts win just because, I mean, we watched Kansas City. I've watched the Colts for my entire life at this point, it feels like, and they disappoint, and then they're going to win in a fashion where it's not going to give you this like, oh my gosh, they fixed everything, but it's going to be like, we won, I guess.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to go the Colts win 20-17. So I would still mash the under on the over-under. Did you say 43.5 is what it's at?
Yeah, 43.5 points total.
Yeah, so I feel pretty confident in the under on that one. Probably not one that Amazon Prime is licking their lips at right now.
Right.
That this is on this is on their matchup for the week.
Right.
But I'm gonna go under, and it's gonna be 20-17. The Colts are gonna win, and we will feel okay about it.
Oh man. So with you guys split, I'm going to go with Jake Arthur and agree with
All
him.
right.
I'm going with the Broncos to win this game. I think the score will be 21-20. This will be another game
Ooh.
where the Colts do not score over 20 points again. It's just ridiculous. These are two out of the bottom three most disappointing teams coming into
Mhm.
this season, along with the Vegas Raiders, in my opinion. As far as how their rosters look and where national media thought they were to who they actually are today, these two teams are way more talented than what they have been displaying this season. Somebody's got to win, unless it's the Texans. Week 1, somebody has to win this game.
Yeah.
And I think the Colts lose a heartbreaker. I just always lean in these type of situations to the team that's at home on a short week. Both teams not playing well. I just got to go with the Denver Broncos until the Colts show me that they can win these type of games.
Now I'll put you guys on the spot real quick. If they lose, and I know the manner in which you lose can affect things greatly, but let's say they lose and it's another ugly one where it just looks like they didn't get off the bus. What do you think is the fallout from that? Do you think anyone gets fired yet after that? It doesn't have to be anyone at the top, but I know you kind of start looking at position coaches. For example,
the question was, do I wish I think we could see a positional coach fired depending on how they lost. It just depends on if the offensive line again, because I think that has been the storyline. I think we're seeing more and more of the coaches, the head coach, Marcus Brady, even being willing to drop little sprinkles in interviews here and there if they're asked enough. That'll kind of show that they're willing to point blame in that direction without saying it's their fault.
Yeah.
So it kind of reminds me a little bit of how at the end of a couple seasons ago where you kind of started to see that with the defensive line, where they weren't blaming them, but they were starting to answer those questions a little differently. And then we saw Baker was not retained. I think if we saw a change, it could be like a Strasser type fire. I don't think Jim Irsay would fire Ballard or Reich mid-season. I definitely don't think he would fire Ballard mid-season. So unless Ballard is just up with Reich after this game and they believe Reich is a big reason for that, I just can't see it happening. But Chris Strasser is the name I'd watch.
You literally stole my answer.
That's why I wanted to go first. That's why I wanted to go first. I saw the light bulb and I was like, no.
I think it's the most logical one, though.
Yeah. I just can't see a real big shakeup happening. I know if there were going to be a shift, this would probably be a good time to do it when you're on the mini bye. Considering that the real bye is so late in the season, you're probably not going to make a move during week 14 or anything like that. So if you're going to make a drastic move, this would be the time to do it when you have kind of 10 days in between the game Thursday and the next game the following Sunday. So I can see a shakeup, and all fingers are pointing to Chris Strasser. He's the guy that's been with the team for a while. I believe he's going on his third season, as the offensive line coach. And that's the unit that's struggling the most. It's different if the wide receivers were struggling, considering this is Reggie Wayne's first year at the position. Not a lot of money has been devoted to that position. It would be kind of more understandable. But when you have a position group that's supposed to be the strength of your team, and they're not getting the job done, and you have a coach that has a tenure of 2 to 3 years, which means he's real familiar with these guys. This shouldn't be occurring in year 3 of your tenure. It's just the writing's pretty much on the wall that if they come out and just get completely blown up and Matt Ryan's under fire and he's steady fumbling, then, the writing's pretty much on the wall for Chris Strasser.
Agreed. That's one I think I pointed out a couple weeks ago. That it just seems like the most logical one because, like you said, he's been there a bit. These other guys kind of have a longer leash because they just got there, especially the whole defensive group. But he's been there a while, and he has these experienced guys who are supposed to be Pro Bowlers. So, Yeah. That is it for us today, everyone. Check back with us after the game for our instant reactions to either a win, loss, or a draw. We don't know. Follow at the Destin Adams and at Shaad McGinnis on Twitter. Follow at Jake Arthur NFL, at Zach Hicks 2, and Locked On Colts on Twitter as well. Subscribe to us all on YouTube as well. Are you guys are on YouTube? Is that right? I know you just started the show.
Not
Okay.
yet.
Where can we find you?
You will be able to see our faces here soon. Don't worry about it. But right now we're just blessing people with audio. But
I love it.
Shaad and I show, the Saddle Up show with Shaad and Destin, is every Tuesday and Thursday. You'll get that dropped on the Stampede Blue podcast stream. So make sure you guys are subscribed to Stampede Blue. And we got written work going on as well. So make sure you're over there at Stampede Blue, subscribing to their posts, follow Stampede Blue as well, everybody, for SB Nation. But that's where you can see all our stuff.
Yep. Zach and I love Stampede Blue and SB Nation. We spend our time there as well. So good folks over there. Good leadership with Brett. We love them. And thanks again, everyone, for making Locked On Colts your first listen every day. Now make your second listen the Peacock and Williamson NFL show. Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson give you the expert NFL analysis in less than 30 minutes. It's free and available wherever you get your podcasts. We'll see you after the game.